Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Young and the Restless channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The tension hanging over Genoa City was about to reach a dangerous new level as fear, suspicion, and emotional fractures spread through the lives of the Newman family. On Wednesday, May 13th, the atmosphere would grow heavier with every passing moment, especially after Victor Newman realized that waiting for the authorities to solve the Matt Clark problem was no longer an option. The police had failed to provide answers, failed to provide protection, and most importantly, failed to stop the chaos before it spiraled even further out of control. Victor had seen enough. With the cold determination that had made him one of the most powerful men in the city, he gathered his trusted team together for an urgent mission that carried an unmistakable sense of danger. The room itself seemed to tighten with pressure as Victor made it clear that this was no ordinary assignment. Matt Clark needed to be found immediately before another disaster unfolded and before more lives were shattered by the uncertainty surrounding him. Victor's instincts refused to let him relax, especially because Matt's story about suffering from amnesia simply did not erase the threat he posed. Even though Matt insisted he could not remember the darker parts of his past, the Newmans knew better than to trust such fragile circumstances. Victor especially understood how quickly situations could turn deadly when unstable people were left unchecked. There was an unmistakable fire in his eyes as he pushed his team harder, demanding answers, demanding action, and demanding results before Matt slipped further beyond their reach. Deep down, Victor could feel that the danger was only growing stronger beneath the surface, like a storm waiting for the perfect moment to explode. And while others might have hoped Matt's memory loss would somehow neutralize the threat, Victor wasn't willing to gamble his family's safety on hope alone, because the terrifying truth lingered in the shadows. Matt's amnesia was real, but it would not last forever. Somewhere beneath the confusion clouding Matt's mind, the memories were still there, buried and waiting to resurface. It was only a matter of time before those missing pieces came rushing back, and when they did, the consequences could be catastrophic for everyone caught in the fallout. That looming possibility cast an eerie shadow over every conversation and every decision being made behind closed doors. Yet perhaps even more alarming was Matt's growing connection to Patty Williams, a woman whose name alone carried memories of manipulation, instability, and destruction throughout Genoa City. Patty had always thrived in chaos, and now fate appeared to be drawing her dangerously close to a man whose fractured mind could become a ticking time bomb at any moment. The thought of Matt and Patty forming any kind of alliance was enough to send chills through those who understood exactly what both of them were capable of. Nothing good could possibly come from two emotionally volatile people finding comfort in one another, and the possibility of their partnership threatened to unleash a whole new level of turmoil on the city. The danger was no longer theoretical anymore. It was slowly becoming real, piece by terrifying piece. While Victor fought to protect the family from external threats, another deeply personal crisis was quietly brewing inside the Newman family itself. Adam Newman could not shake the disturbing feeling that something was very wrong with Nick Newman. There was something in Nick's behavior that unsettled Adam during Wednesday's episode. Subtle shifts in his attitude, guarded expressions, and the kind of emotional distance that immediately raised old fears. Adam knew his brother well enough to recognize when he was hiding pain behind forced composure, and the warning bells in his mind only grew louder the longer he watched Nick try to pretend everything was under control. The concern eating away at Adam wasn't simply paranoia. It came from painful experience, from history, and from the fear that Nick might once again be slipping back into destructive habits that could destroy him from the inside out. Adam began to suspect that Nick wasn't just hiding stress or emotional exhaustion. He feared Nick was lying about being okay because he was secretly using drugs again. The emotional tension between the brothers quickly intensified as Nick realized Adam was dancing around an accusation he was struggling to say aloud. Instead of avoiding the confrontation, Nick pushed Adam directly, almost daring him to say what was truly on his mind. There was frustration in Nick's voice, but underneath it all was something even more heartbreaking: exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying secrets, pain, and pressure for far too long. Adam finally confronted him head-on, asking the question neither of them wanted to hear but both knew had to be asked. Was Nick using again? The moment carried enormous emotional weight because beneath the suspicion and conflict was a desperate attempt at love and protection. Adam wasn't trying to attack his brother, he was trying to save him before things spiraled beyond repair. For perhaps one of the rarest moments in their complicated relationship, Adam truly tried to become the supportive sibling Nick needed, even if it meant risking another painful confrontation between them. At the same time, another emotional storm was quietly forming elsewhere in Genoa City as Devin Winters found himself increasingly worried about Lily Winters and the choices she was making with her heart. Devin could see the signs clearly, even if Lily refused to admit them out loud. The emotional walls she once built around herself were slowly crumbling, and Kane Ashby was finding his way back into her life once again. Watching it unfold stirred a deep uneasiness inside Devin because he remembered all too well the heartbreak, complications, and emotional destruction that had followed Lily and Kane in the past. He feared Lily was allowing herself to be pulled back into something dangerous simply because old feelings never truly disappeared. Love had a way of making people ignore warning signs, and Devin worried that Lily's emotions were clouding her judgment before she could even realize it herself. To him, it felt like watching someone walk willingly toward another heartbreak while convincing themselves the outcome would somehow be different this time. Still, despite his fears, Devin understood that Lily was ultimately entitled to make her own decisions, no matter how painful the consequences might become. That reality left him trapped between concern and helplessness, forced to watch from the sidelines as emotions pulled Lily closer to Kane once again. And Lily, determined to follow her heart regardless of outside opinions, continued defending Kane every chance she got. There was warmth returning to her whenever his name came up, a softness in her expressions that revealed feelings she could no longer fully hide. Slowly but surely, the emotional distance between them seemed to disappear, replaced by lingering chemistry and unresolved love that refused to stay buried in the past. Every interaction between Lily and Kane carried growing romantic tension, hinting that a full-blown reunion might be closer than anyone expected. But in true Genoa City fashion, love never returned without complications, and the closer they drifted back toward each other, the more inevitable it felt that new trouble was waiting just around the corner. As the night deepened across Genoa City, the emotional pressure surrounding the Newman family only intensified, creating the unsettling feeling that everything was approaching a dangerous breaking point. Victor Newman refused to allow fear to slow him down, but even a man as powerful and controlled as Victor could not completely silence the instincts warning him that time was running out. Every lead connected to Matt Clark suddenly felt urgent, every unanswered question felt heavier, and every delay seemed to increase the risk to the people Victor loved most. Behind the sharp commands and relentless determination, there was a father and grandfather desperately trying to prevent catastrophe before it arrived at his doorstep again. The uncertainty surrounding Matt's fractured memory created a chilling unpredictability that no amount of planning could fully control. One moment, Matt appeared confused and vulnerable, and the next, there were flashes of something darker buried underneath the surface, fragments of a man capable of chaos if the wrong trigger awakened him completely. Victor understood better than anyone that the most dangerous threats were often the ones people underestimated, and he had no intention of making that mistake. Meanwhile, the possibility of Matt's connection to Patty Williams continued to cast a dark shadow over everything unfolding in the city. Patty had always existed on the edge of emotional instability, unpredictable and deeply dangerous whenever obsession took hold of her mind. The mere idea of her finding common ground with Matt sent waves of fear through those who remembered the destruction she had caused before. Together, they represented the kind of alliance that could spiral into disaster without warning. Two wounded, emotionally volatile people clinging to one another in ways that could quickly become toxic and explosive. Somewhere beneath Patty's fragile demeanor was a woman capable of manipulation, and somewhere beneath Matt's confusion was a man whose lost memories could return with terrifying force at any moment. The combination felt like a ticking clock nobody knew how to stop, and as whispers about their growing connection spread quietly through Genoa City, an uncomfortable truth became impossible to ignore. This situation was no longer just about finding Matt. It was about preventing an emotional chain reaction that could destroy multiple lives before anyone even realized how serious the danger had become. At the Newman Ranch, the emotional atmosphere between Adam and Nick grew heavier after their painful confrontation. Adam had asked the question weighing on his heart, but the answer he received did little to calm the fear inside him. Nick's defensive energy, his frustration, and the exhaustion behind his eyes only deepened Adam's suspicion that something was terribly wrong beneath the surface. Years of family conflict, resentment, and complicated history suddenly faded into the background as Adam focused entirely on his brother's well-being. For once, this was not about rivalry or competition. It was about fear. The fear of watching someone you love slowly fall apart while insisting they are perfectly fine. Nick carried himself like a man determined to hold everything together through sheer willpower alone. But cracks were beginning to show in ways that could no longer be ignored. Every tense pause between the brothers carried emotional weight, as though both men understood that one wrong step could push their fragile relationship back into darkness. Nick himself seemed trapped in an exhausting internal battle. trying desperately to maintain control while avoiding the painful truths Adam was forcing him to confront. There was anger in him, but beneath the anger was vulnerability he could barely stand to expose. He hated the idea that people were questioning his strength, questioning his stability, and looking at him with concern instead of confidence. Yet Adam's words lingered in the air long after the confrontation ended, impossible to shake completely. Somewhere deep down, Nick understood why Adam was worried, and that realization made the entire situation even more emotionally painful. The Newman brothers had spent years hurting each other, misunderstanding each other, and fighting battles fueled by pride, but now the possibility of genuine loss loomed over them in a completely different way. Adam's concern was real, raw, and deeply personal, and whether Nick wanted to admit it or not, there was something heartbreaking about seeing his younger brother become the one trying to pull him back from the edge. Across town, Lily Winters continued wrestling with emotions she could no longer fully suppress, even as Devon's concerns grew stronger by the day. Every moment she spent with Kane Ashby seemed to reopen old emotional wounds while simultaneously reigniting feelings she thought had faded long ago. Kane represented both comfort and danger to Lily, a man connected to some of her happiest memories and some of her deepest heartbreaks. That emotional contradiction made her vulnerable in ways she barely understood herself. Whenever Devon tried warning her about the risks of reopening that chapter of her life, Lily instinctively defended Kane with growing passion, refusing to believe history was destined to repeat itself. To her, people changed, relationships evolved, and maybe, just maybe, the love they once shared deserved another chance to survive under different circumstances. But Devon couldn't ignore the painful memories still attached to their past, and watching Lily move closer to Kane again filled him with dread he struggled to put into words. There was something undeniably powerful happening between Lily and Kane now, something emotional and magnetic that neither of them seemed capable of resisting any longer. Their conversations carried unspoken longing beneath every glance, every smile, and every moment of lingering silence. Old chemistry that had once defined their relationship was slowly coming back to life, stronger than either of them expected. Even when they tried to keep things casual or guarded, emotion kept slipping through the cracks. It became increasingly clear that their connection was evolving beyond friendship, beyond nostalgia, and into something far more dangerous emotionally. For Lily, the possibility of love returning felt both thrilling and terrifying because reopening her heart meant risking another devastating collapse if things went wrong again. Yet despite the risks, she seemed unable to walk away from the hope growing between them. And in Genoa City, hope often came wrapped in heartbreak, waiting patiently for the perfect moment to strike. As all these lives moved closer to collision, a storm of emotional turmoil continued building beneath the surface of Genoa City. Victor's hunt for Matt threatened to uncover secrets capable of igniting chaos. Adam's fears for Nick hinted at a personal crisis that could devastate the Newman family from within. Lily's growing closeness to Kane reopened emotional wounds that never fully healed, while Devon watched helplessly from the sidelines, bracing himself for the fallout he feared was inevitable. Every storyline seemed connected by one haunting truth. Nobody was truly safe from the consequences of the choices being made now. The city stood suspended between hope and disaster, love and betrayal, healing and destruction. And with every passing hour, the tension only grew stronger, promising that the emotional explosion still to come would change everything for the people caught in their path. By the time dawn threatened to rise over Genoa City, the emotional tension surrounding every family, every relationship, and every secret had grown almost unbearable. There was a strange stillness hanging in the air, the kind that settles over a city just before everything changes forever. Victor Newman remained consumed by the mission to track down Matt Clark, refusing to allow exhaustion or uncertainty to weaken his focus. Behind closed doors, his operation intensified as trusted members of his inner circle scrambled to follow leads, uncover hidden connections, and anticipate Matt's next move before disaster struck again. Victor's instincts kept telling him the danger was evolving faster than anyone realized. Matt was no longer simply a confused man suffering from memory loss. He was becoming the center of a growing storm, and the longer he remained free, the more unpredictable the outcome became. Victor had spent his life protecting the Newman Empire from enemies both personal and professional, but this threat felt different because it carried an emotional unpredictability that couldn't easily be controlled with power, money, or influence. What troubled Victor most was the realization that Matt's lost memories were slowly beginning to stir beneath the surface. Small flashes, fragmented emotions, and moments of recognition were already starting to appear. even if Matt himself didn't fully understand what was happening inside his mind. Those subtle changes created an atmosphere of constant unease because everyone knew what could happen once the full truth returned to him. The man walking around in confusion today might not be the same man tomorrow, and if the darker parts of Matt's past resurfaced all at once, the emotional and physical damage could spread across Genoa City like wildfire. Every second Victor delayed increased the possibility of another violent explosion waiting around the corner. But even as Victor focused on stopping Matt, another terrifying possibility lingered in the back of his mind. Patty Williams. Her growing attachment to Matt threatened to complicate everything in ways nobody could fully predict. Patty had always been driven by obsession and emotional extremes, and now she seemed dangerously drawn to someone standing at the edge of psychological collapse himself. Together, Matt and Patty represented chaos disguised as vulnerability. Their connection appeared fragile on the surface, almost sympathetic at times, but underneath it carried all the ingredients necessary for catastrophe. Patty saw herself in Matt's confusion, in his loneliness, and perhaps even in the darkness buried within him. That emotional bond created the possibility of loyalty between them, and loyalty could quickly transform into protection, manipulation, or even destruction, depending on how events unfolded. The terrifying part was that neither of them seemed fully aware of how dangerous their partnership could become. There was an eerie sense that fate itself was pushing them together for reasons nobody would understand until it was too late. And as Victor's team moved closer to finding Matt, the emotional stakes rose even higher because confronting him now might trigger the very memories everyone feared would return. The city was balancing on the edge of a knife, uncertain whether the next revelation would bring answers or unleash something far worse. Elsewhere, the emotional wounds inside the Newman family continued deepening after Adam's confrontation with Nick. Even after the conversation ended, Adam couldn't shake the image of his brother's guarded expression and defensive reactions. Something about Nick's behavior haunted him because it felt painfully familiar, the signs of someone carrying burdens too heavy to manage alone while desperately pretending otherwise. Adam's concern came from a place far deeper than suspicion. He remembered the pain addiction and emotional collapse could cause, not only to the individual suffering, but to everyone standing close enough to love them. And despite the years of conflict between the brothers, Adam could not bear the thought of watching Nick destroy himself in silence. For once, the complicated history between them seemed insignificant compared to the fear of losing family to something darker than anger or rivalry. Adam wanted to believe Nick was telling the truth, but his instincts kept warning him that the situation was far more serious than Nick was willing to admit.